upon children. They're creating Homo Manchurian candidates with all these pedophile priests and pedophile rabbis and pedophile all of them. And that's a control game they've been playing. And they use those Homo Manchurian candidates to set up politicians and prosecutors, etc., with a little GHB in their drink. And in the morning, you got some pictures of little boys in you, and then they got your vote. And there's nothing you can do about it. That's what's been going on in a large degree. You'll see more of that throughout my campaign. But we are going to try to remove the pedophiles from office. There's a recent report on January 7th that 5,200 Pentagon employees were downloading child pornography. That's pedophiles. And that none of them have been really investigated or tried in 4 years. And this story broke on Anderson Cooper, the Vanderbilt elitist family, I believe he comes from, on CNN. So, you know, it's there. It's out there. Just dial it in and you'll see, too, that our Pentagon is a bunch of pedophiles. Mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing what's going on. So the next step, really, after arresting them and trying them, by the way, the ones that are vindicated through the trial, maybe Ron Paul, maybe Mike Gravel, maybe Dennis Kucinich, who voted against war and who voted consistently against the crimes and tried to raise a voice and aren't guilty of participating because they can have their jobs back. That's what vindication means. So they could come back to their government jobs. Everybody else would be replaced with new, fresh faces. And this will really help the country, by the way. It'll bring in floods of new ideas, and it'll knock out all the things that were knocking our jobs out that were all done illegally, all done through crime and fraud. Our economy isn't melting because of economic conditions in the world. It's melting because of fraud, where a certain class is benefiting at everybody else's demise. This is where pitchforks are the true investment if you want to really hedge your bet here. And remember that all their stolen loot can be recovered, all can be accounted for. In fact, right after you hang some of them for the war crimes and treason, just grab their accountants and put them on the block next, and you'll find out where all the money went and all the gold and everything they've been stealing from our country, our national treasures, where they all went. You know, we recovered where the Nazi loot was too. So you can only hide it so much. You can only run it to so many countries, and those countries are going to give it back. Otherwise, we will declare war on them, and I will make that a third act of my presidency. So, you know, we're going to trail it back. We fingerprinted, I believe, most of the Coopsters. You can read about their names at the CFR, the Skull and Bones, the Bilderbergers. They're all directly tied to Chase Bank and B of A and JP Morgan and all of those things. So let's just take a look for a minute. All their assets would be confiscated in a criminal RICO that was proven. And all their trust funds would be redeemed. All of their offshore accounts would be redeemed. Their houses, their boats, their planes, their yachts. And by the way, these are politicians who are supposed to be earning $100 grand. And by the way, I'll do the job of president for $100 grand. Okay, that's my prize, and I won't take a single, whatever you call it, lobbyist or anybody's influence. I am not influential by any group or cult or blah. I care about one thing: the propagation of our species for our children. And I'll get to more of that in my presidential campaign, part 2. But for now, let's look at what we could recover. You know, start adding up the assets of Halliburton, XE, Lockheed, KBR, B of A, JP Morgan, you name it. Put all of the people you know who have benefited from either the wars that were illegal or the financial crimes, and start adding it up. You know, you got BP, Exxon, all would be charged or broken up. And by the way, too big to fail is a sign that you need to break up the companies, not fund them more to do more damage to you. Whoever thought that up is lying to you. What you need to do when something's too big to fail in our country, when we used to have a law for antitrust, was an antitrust action and break it up, because otherwise you have an oligarchy forming. And again, you have an oligarchy forming here in the United States of Nazi America. Anyways, add up Countrywide, Freddie, Fannie, all these companies involved in the scandals and crimes, and you'll see that when you grab all those executives, and they were executives with bought degrees or friends and family, and they were there to commit crimes against the shareholders and the people and the workers. So, you know, what we're really going to lose here is the 1% are going to go to prison, and the 99% are going to get back all their money, and the country will move on in a bright new direction, not run by criminals. The political crimes, all of these politicians, the Bush family fortune would be recovered under trading with the enemy. They were the enemy, for treason, for sedition. You'd be able to grab all their family wealth. So the Clintons, the Bushes, who, by the way, why have they become wealthy to such degree of stately kings, that all from crime? The judges, the law firms, the lawyers, and by the way, the lawyers all need to start to be prosecuted, and that would also be on my agenda, for every single crime they have committed. They approved torture and changed the law to allow a war crime. Therefore, they're war criminals. The judge's trial at Nuremberg will set the standard right there. We did the judge's trial to the Nazis. Why won't we do it to our people? And again, if they're innocent, they don't have to worry. If they're guilty, they'll get sentenced like the Nazi judges who approved torturing and stealing people's assets and then putting you in an oven. We'll be right back. I need to take a short break, stretch my pretty face, and say goodbye for a moment. And we're back live with Eliot Bernstein's presidential platform for the 2012 election. And we're going to pick it right up where we left off, recovering all the assets through RICO of all the organizations involved in the crime. So now you've recovered all the assets. You get a forensic accountant in, you trail it out, you go across seas, you grab all the money that they stole, where they put it, every penny of it. That will be one of my first goals once we effectively remove the coup. The country's first line of defense in removing a tyrannous coup is not you, the people. Don't get that wrong. You shouldn't take arms to your government as directed in the Constitution when it corrupts, unless the military doesn't show up to do it. And you know, the military is now aware of war crimes. In fact, Abu Ghraib was exposed. Senior military officials resigned and exposed Bush and called him a war criminal. And so the military can't say they don't know war crimes have been committed. And they are under an oath and a duty to country and honor and the code of military to arrest their leaders if they've committed war crimes. And yeah, turn on them and surround the Congress, surround the Supreme Court, and put them into a prison and open a military tribunal, and the war criminals tried, and the civil crimes tried, and the criminal crimes tried in, you know, civilian courts if necessary. And they have an obligation to the people to do that. They can't just say we were following orders and yet we kept continuing the orders when we knew they were wrong, and generals came out and the war crimes were exposed. I mean, look, the Nazis got exposed for their concentration camps and were destroyed from it. We're still operating them and increasing them in black sites, and Obama has continued the Bush legacy perfectly. I mean, he's diffused the Americans' public brain from the trial, so where's your Truth Commission even? It's years. This guy's a constitutional scholar, my ass. He's a commie. He's a pinko. He's part of the coup. He's a Nazi. And these Nazis come in all different colors, because this time the Nazis were able to buy off good American people who wanted to join the elitist society, and for $1 sold out their neighbors and mothers and grandmothers, all to make a quick buck on Wall Street or in the law firm or in the whatever. And they've sold out our country to these Nazis who were manipulating them, and we'll get to that in exposing the coup in my presidential campaign run here. I'll therefore, as the commander-in-chief, for the short time that we'll need to arrest these people, I'll summon the military, basically, to the Capitol to surround them, to the Supreme Court, to the regulators, and arrest them all, and hold them for trial, and give them due process and everything our country requires, and give them the right to a trial with lawyers. But if they're found guilty and of treason, you know, the death penalty is still effective, I believe, for that, and should be enacted here to set an example to future generations that want to become politicians, and definitely to the next guy who replaces the guy who's hanging from the Capitol lawn. I mean, you're going to think twice before committing treason on the people or joining a coup that's secretly plotting the destruction of our sovereignty and the world's sovereignty. So, and I'll quote here for a minute the words of Sandra Day O'Connor as she fled the Supreme Court with the excuse that she was going to manage her husband or something. Can't remember. Maybe it was too cold. Her first speech at Georgetown on March 10th. Let me read it here. Sandra Day O'Connor, nominated by Ronald Reagan as the first woman Supreme Court Justice, declared, quote, "We must be ever vigilant against those who would strong-arm the judiciary." She pointed to autocracies in the developing world and former communist countries as lessons on where interference with the judiciary might lead. Quote, "It takes a lot of degeneration before a country falls into a dictatorship, but we should avoid these ends by avoiding these beginnings." Now, we didn't avoid her, we didn't listen to her, and our country has slipped ever deeper since that point in 2006 into lawlessness, into, you know, a criminal enterprise, Nazi America, Crime Inc. And that was, that O'Connor quote came from Nita Totenberg. So if you look her up, you'll find it under O'Connor decries Republican attacks on courts. Oh, and here's some more from the morning edition on March 10th. Newly retired Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor took on conservative Republican critics of the courts in a speech Thursday. She told an audience at Georgetown that Republican proposals and their sometimes uncivil tone pose a danger to the independence of the judiciary and the freedoms of all Americans. Now, what in God's name was Sandra Day O'Connor referring to? What was she warning the citizens of the United States about? A dictatorship? And was it because we had been forced a decider by our treacherous, traitorous Supreme Court idiots who violated the Constitution and committed treason upon this land? Well, perhaps she did not want to be a part of the treasonous coup. She left. And she walked out saying those words, "Beware of the dictatorship coming at you. It's better to stop now than later." The problems of stopping it later could be lots of people dead, brothers and sisters in America killing each other, hate baiting to sell arms, and world conflict to create money. And that's what we're talking about here. Not money for everyone, money for a few nutcases that the world will be better to be rid of, by the way, all of them. And their world will just begin. A long, eternal place where we all believe that guys like Hitler went. Now, my first course of action would lead to fresh faces coming in. And those